The wind howled across the North Atlantic like a voice from the gods, ancient and unrelenting. You stand on the cliffs of Iceland, staring westward. Behind you, the land that gave you life, its black volcanic earth, its geysers, its stubborn people, has become too small, too crowded, too filled with blood feuds and scarcity. You are not alone. Around you, a dozen families make final preparations. The hulls of their Norse broad, seaworthy Viking ships creak under the weight of timber cattle iron tools and salted meat. Some carry carved crucifixes tied beside charms of Thor's hammer. Faith, old and new, will travel with them. And with you. Eric the Red, the man who gave Greenland its name, stands nearby. He is large, scarred, and charismatic. A man of exile turned legend. Years ago, banished from Iceland for bloodshed, he sailed west and found something no one believed could exist, a vast ice-rimmed land with green valleys in summer. He called it Greenland, a name he chose not for truth, but for hope. Now you are answering his call. Not for gold, not for conquest, but for something older land. Freedom, a place to begin again, where no one knows your family's shame, where your children might thrive without blades at their backs. You think of your home, your small turf-roofed house, your aging mother who chose not to come, and the grave of your brother who died in a feud over a sheep. You are not sad. Grief has passed. What remains is hunger. Not just for food, but for space, for peace, for the whisper of something beyond. The crossing will be dangerous. The sea is fickle, and the distance great. You have heard stories, entire ships lost to fog, to icebergs, to storms that tear sails like paper. But you also know the sea is your people's road. It has carried you from Norway to the British Isles to Iceland, and now perhaps to the edge of the world. As the final supplies are loaded, a priest steps forward. He raises his hands to bless the voyage. His voice is low and firm, speaking Latin words you only half understand. Yet you listen closely. You need all the blessings you can get. Then Eric lifts his hand and points toward the horizon. There, he says, there is our future. The sails rise. You board. The ropes are cut from the mooring stones, and with a great heave, the ships drift from shore. The land behind you grows smaller. The cold, salt wind strikes your face. You taste it sharp, clean, honest. Ahead lies uncertainty, hardship, and perhaps greatness. You do not look back, for in your bones you feel it already. History is shifting beneath your feet, and you are becoming part of it. The open sea surrounds you on all sides, endless, gray and restless. Days blur together. The world is water sky and the creaking timbers of the ship beneath your feet. This is the whale road, as the Skalds call it, an ancient path through the cold, carved by courage and desperation. You watch the sun hover strangely in the sky. It never quite sets this far north in midsummer. Instead, it drips golden light like honey across the waves, stretching time into a sleepless blur. The children sleep in bundles of wool. The old men pray. Some stare at the horizon for hours, mouths dry with silence. You are among 50 souls on your ship, and you know most of them well. Cousins, neighbors, old enemies, turned companions by shared hunger. You are not warriors now. You are settlers. Still axes are kept close. The sea is not kind. Twice in the first week, storms rise without warning. The sails thrash like beasts, and the ship groans under the weight of waves. One night you lose a cow. Another night a man is washed overboard. His wife screams until dawn. No one speaks of it again. Eric the Red sails not far from your ship, always visible in the near distance. His crew calls out with songs to keep the rhythm of the oars. His son Leif, still a boy, stares at the sea with wide eyes, already marked by destiny. You wonder what he will become in this land you haven't yet seen. Food grows scarce. Dried fish. Barley bread, bits of smoked lamb. Water is the hardest. You ration every drop. At night when the wind dies and fog creeps in, you hear ice groaning in the distance, massive bergs that drift silently like ghost ships. One comes close enough that you see a dead seal sprawled on its white back. You whisper a prayer. Some begin to doubt. Is there truly land ahead? Or did Eric lie? Did grief cloud his eyes, or ambition? But you silence those thoughts. You've given too much to turn back now. And then, one gray morning, a shout breaks from the lead ship, and at first you see nothing, just the same dull horizon. Then yes, a shadow, a line, not sky, not cloud, real land. The ships alter course. The closer you draw, the stranger the land appears. It is immense, wild, wrapped in mist and ice. Jagged fjords split the coastline like giant teeth. But there are green places, two low valleys, grass-covered slopes, wild flowers growing in patches near streams that sparkle under the eternal twilight. You weep a little. So do others, not for beauty but for relief. You are still alive. You have found something. The ships land in a narrow bay surrounded by dark cliffs. You step onto gravel and kneel. The earth is cold, but real. It no longer rocks beneath you. You smell moss and salt and wind. Eric stands at the head of the group. He lifts a fistful of soil and lets it fall. This, he says, is Brattahlid, my home. Yours now too. Some begin to cheer. Others fall silent. You feel both. The enormity of it, the strangeness, the fear, but also the stirrings of something ancient, a beginning. You walk inland, a few hundred steps. There is a stream, birch trees, bird song. You turn to look back at the bay where the ships rest. It no longer feels like the edge of the world. It feels like the center of something no one yet understands. You build with your hands before the frost claims them. There is no time to rest. As soon as the ships are anchored and livestock released, the settlers begin to raise shelters. You dig into the soft summer soil, cutting sod and stacking it into walls. Driftwood and salvaged timbers become beams. Roofs are thick with grass and earth insulation against what is coming. You don't know yet how brutal it will be. Greenland summer is deceptive. The sun hovers low, never setting, fully casting everything in a strange, glowing light. It feels eternal, but you know better. The darkness is coming. The nights will return, and they will be long. Your dwelling is small, a single room shared with 7 others. There is a hearth, a rough table, beds made from straw and seal pelts. It smells of damp wool and smoke, and already it feels like survival. Still, there is comfort in the labor. It binds you to the land. You help carve out a church, little more than a wooden frame now, but the priest blesses it nonetheless. A cross stands atop its roof, and someone paints a crude Christ on the wall. Yet not all settlers kneel. Some hang Thor's hammer around their necks. Others carry runes scratched on bone. You see both faiths coexist uneasily, a fragile truce in a fragile place. Cattle graze in the low valleys. The grass is rough and sparse, but enough for now. Fish are plentiful in the fjord's Arctic char-cod. You hunt seals with spears, guided by those who came before. You are learning to listen to the land, to the water, to the shifting sky. Then the sun dips lower each day, and one morning it simply does not rise. The long winter has begun. Cold sets in like a sickness. It seeps through walls, through bones. Ice forms on your breath, even indoors. The children cry more. The old grow silent. You burn everything you can, driftwood, seal oil, peat. Yet still, the cold lingers like a ghost. Snow buries your roof. Winds scream through the valley like the howls of forgotten gods. The fjord freezes over. The world contracts into the space around the hearth. There is no news, no visitors, only the endless dark and the slow dwindling of supplies. You ration the meat, the fish, the grain. Hunger is not new to you, but here it feels more final. One man dies fever, perhaps. A woman loses her newborn. The priest says it is the Lord's will. The others say little. Sometimes you step outside at night wrapped in furs. The silence is deep, untouched. Above the northern lights, shimmer like serpents across the sky. You feel awe and fear. You wonder if the gods of your ancestors are watching, or if you are truly alone at the end of the earth. And yet somehow the fire never fully dies. Somehow you endure. By late February, the first thaw begins. It is small, a drop of water on stone, a bird call, a sliver of sun on the horizon. But it is enough to stir your breath into something that might one day be called hope. Spring will come, the land will yield again, and you will remain, not just as settlers, but as Greenlanders. The thaw is slow, more suggestion than salvation. By April, patches of grass appear through the melting snow. The stream near your settlement begins to flow again hesitantly. The livestock stumble from their shelters, ribs visible beneath shaggy coats. But they are alive. And so are you. The community gathers to give thanks. Some kneel before the cross in the tiny church, where the priest recites Latin blessings in a voice still hoarse from winter. He speaks of resurrection of Christ emerging from death as the land emerges from frost. His hands tremble, but his faith does not. Others do not join. They walk into the hills with carved staffs and whisper old prayers. They offer bread and whale oil to stones they call landvetir, spirits of the earth. One man paints runes in lamb's blood. Another carves a hammer into the threshold of his home. There is no argument between them, just silence. The priest sees this. He does not confront them. Not yet. He speaks louder in the church, sings longer hymns, builds a small altar from local stone. But he knows this is a land too wild for one truth. You feel it too. When you walk into the foggy hills, you sense more than cold. There is a weight in the mist, in the rocks, in the cries of distant seabirds, as if something ancient watches still. Eric the Red refuses baptism. He listens to the priest, nods respectfully, but holds fast to the gods of his forefathers. I will not kneel to a man nailed to wood, he says. I honor those who stand with axes in hand. Yet Eric allows the church to remain. He understands unity more than faith. He knows that in a place this harsh survival demands peace, not purity. You begin planting in the thawed soil. Barley, cabbage, onions. The ground is stubborn rocky, but the sun returns. The days grow long again. You work without pause. There is no luxury of rest, not yet. One evening, the priest visits your home. He brings dried herbs and a warm smile. He blesses your sick mother and leaves quietly. You do not know what to believe, but you respect the man. And perhaps that is enough. That summer, a wedding is held. 2 young settlers, one baptized on. Not are married beneath both a wooden cross and a painted hammer. The priest performs the rites, but an old woman sings a hymn to Freya afterward. No one objects. The feast is humble boiled lamb, dried berries, fermented milk. But the laughter is real. For one night the cold is forgotten. You realize then what makes this place holy is not a god, but the people. Their stubbornness, their ability to bend without breaking, their refusal to die in the dark. The seasons shift again. The Greenland colony endures not by force, not by sword, but by something older patience. You stand one morning at the edge of the sea watching icebergs drift past like white mountains. Behind you, children play in the grass. The church bell rings softly in the breeze, and far up in the cliffs, someone has painted a rune. You do not erase it. You let it be. The colony grows not quickly but steadily. By the 3rd summer, there are over 400 settlers scattered across the southern fjords. The 2 main settlements, Brattahlid and Gardar, form the heart of the new Greenland. Between them stretch narrow valleys, dotted with turf houses, sheep pastures, and thin rows of barley. But the land alone is not. Greenland offers little iron, no grain surplus, no fine cloth. For tools, for luxuries, for survival beyond subsistence, you need something more trade. And Greenland has one thing the outside world wants: walrus. The tusks of the great beasts, long curved ivory white, are prized in Europe. Not just for carving or display, but for status. Kings and bishops wear belts studded with polished tusk. Chess pieces are carved from it. It is not gold, but it might as well be. You learn to hunt them. You and others sail north along the coast into the ice-choked waters of Disco Bay. The walrus are massive, nearly blind, but dangerous. They cluster on rocky shores in grunting herds. The air stinks of salt and flesh and rot. The killing is brutal. Clubs, harpoons, blood on snow. But the tusks are worth it. You also trade in seal skins, narwhal tusks, and down from eider ducks. Everything soft, warm, or sharp becomes currency. Once a year, a ship from Iceland arrives. It carries goods, whetstones, timber, soapstone, ale, silk thread, silver coins. It brings news of Norway, of kings and famines, of distant crusades, and the Pope's latest decrees. When it leaves, it carries your year's harvest of ivory and skins. You are proud of this exchange. Proud that Greenland, though distant, is not forgotten. That your people are part of the world's great web, woven by ships and seasons. But trade is uncertain. Some years, storms prevent the Icelandic ship from reaching you. Other years, your walrus hunting fails. One year, the ship comes late, and only half its goods are unloaded before it must return. You begin to understand that you are not just settlers, you are gamblers, your dice cast upon the ice. A priest warns you that commerce breeds sin, that the love of silver corrodes the soul. But even he asks for iron nails and beeswax candles when the ship arrives. At the heart of it all is the tusk. You polish one now sitting beside the hearth. Its surface is warm from your hands, its spiral grain catching the firelight. You wonder where it will end up. In a palace in Paris. In the hand of a bishop in Cologne. It came from the edge of the world, from your edge. There is a woman in Brattahlid who carves runes into ivory. She sells them as charms. One day she shows you a piece tiny, intricate. It bears the face of a man with wide, staring eyes. It's the sea spirit, she says, the one who calls the whales. You ask if she believes in it. She shrugs. Enough to eat, she says. That is Greenland now. Not a land of myths, but of negotiations, of compromise, of doing what must be done again and again. You lie down that night beneath your roof of sod and stars. The tusk rests by your side, smooth and silent. The soil lies to you. In summer, it appears rich enough dark, soft, growing patches of barley and hardy vegetables. You walk barefoot across green moss and think perhaps this place can become like Iceland. Perhaps even better. But it's a thin illusion. Beneath the surface, the soil is shallow and acidic. Rain cuts deep channels into your barley plots. Years of grazing wear the grass to mud. You see it first in the sheep. They grow thin, birth fewer lambs. Then in the cattle, wandering further for pasture. Then in the children who become pale, slow, and quiet during winter. You begin to ask questions. No Viking ever wished to ask, is this land enough? Or are we only buying time? A man named Torgrim tries a new method, digging deeper beds, mixing ash with the soil. It helps. Slightly. Others begin rotating their grazing fields, fencing off plots to allow regrowth. But you all know you're surviving, not thriving. One summer, a woman from the western settlement, hundreds of miles away, arrives on foot, hollow-eyed and frostbitten. She tells of a winter with no hay of cattle that froze to death, upright in the snow of homes buried and never reopened. She is the only survivor of her family. The colony sends supplies, of course. That is the Greenland way. But the message is clear. This land does not forgive mistakes. And the weather is changing, subtly, year by year. Winters grow colder. Summers shorter. The sea ice arrives earlier. Some say it's punishment. Others say it's a shift of the world itself. You don't speak about it often, but you feel it in your bones. The livestock begin to die. You walk among their bodies, stiff, bloated, silent. You bury them when you can. When you cannot, you leave them for the ravens. The stench clings to your clothes, your hands, your dreams. Still you plant. Still you fish and hunt and build. Still you endure. There is a kind of holiness in that, not faith, but persistence. A refusal to vanish. A clinging to stone and snow, with hands that blister but never release. At night the fire is small, the conversation smaller. You sharpen tools and count stores of dried meat. You've grown used to the hunger. It's like a second heart, now steady, familiar. You dream of Iceland sometimes, not of returning. That's impossible. But of its warm fields, its hot springs, its abundance. Then you wake in the dark, and the roof drips meltwater on your brow, and you are reminded that dreams are luxuries, and Greenland is not generous, but it is yours. You chose it, and now it defines you. You rise each morning not because you believe it will get easier, but because no one else will rise in your place. That too is a kind of victory. The sea no longer obeys the old rhythms. once the fjords broke free of ice by early spring. Now, even in midsummer, jagged sheets drift close to shore. Fishing boats must wait for tides to shift, for winds to push the floes back out to sea. You can hear them groan at night, deep grinding sounds like the breath of a sleeping beast. Some call it a passing curse. Others call it the beginning of the end. The elders speak of winters past, when the earth still yielded grain, when the grass reached higher than the knees. You nod respectfully. But you know those days are gone. The climate is changing not fast like fire, but slow like stone. And you are not the only ones feeling it. The Icelandic ships arrive less often. When they do, their hulls are half empty, their crews thinner, their stories darker. They speak of growing cold in Norway, of famines in Ireland, of prices rising and trade shrinking. You begin to realize the world is not just turning away from you. It is shrinking in on itself. There are rumors of strange storms over the Atlantic. Black skies, red lightning hail that cracks bone. You don't know if they're true. But you've seen enough to believe in things that sound like madness. You keep fishing cod char seal, but the hauls are smaller. You must go further out, deeper into dangerous waters closer to the ice. You tie ropes to your boat, not to secure gear, but in case you fall in and must be dragged back half frozen. The whales have changed too. They used to pass close, their breath like geysers against the blue. Now they stay away. Or perhaps they've died elsewhere, following currents you cannot see toward warmth you no longer remember. At night, the frost comes early. You wrap the children in furs before the end of summer. The crops freeze before harvest. More animals die. You begin rationing before the equinox. You no longer ask how long must we endure. You ask how long can we. There are whispers of leaving. A few families pack what they can and vanish into the sea, sailing south perhaps, or east, hoping for Iceland, hoping for rescue. Some make it, some don't. A boat washes ashore one morning, empty, cracked, bird-pecked. No one claims it, but you stay, not because you believe you will thrive, but because you've built something here. A graveyard, yes, but also a memory, a testament. If you vanish now, who will remember that Greenland was ever alive? One night, as frost coats the walls of your home, your daughter draws a shape on the window, a spiral sun. It used to shine longer, she says. You don't answer. There is no lie to offer, only silence and survival. The ice creeps closer every year, but so do you. They came in silence across snow, across time. At first you see only signs of broken seal carcass neatly cleaned. Strange prints in the frost, smaller than yours. Lighter but unmistakably human. Then one morning near the frozen fjord, you find a kayak. Narrow, beautiful. Its frame is bone and driftwood, its skin stitched with sealskin, so tight it glistens like ice. And beside it, standing still as stone, is a man. He wears no iron carries, no sword. His coat is stitched from fur, so finely you barely see the seams. In his hand, a harpoon, tipped with carved ivory. He says nothing, just watches. So do you. Behind him, others emerge. Women, children, faces dark with sun eyes sharp. They speak a language you do not know, shaped like wind and water. Their voices rise and fall, like the waves you crossed to come here. You do not greet them with fear. You greet them with exhaustion, because something in their bearing tells you they know this land. They were born of it. They did not arrive by sea, but rose with the snow, with the stone, with the bones of seals and caribou. Where you struggle to survive, they move with ease. Some settlers panic. They remember tales of savages, raiders, demons from the north. But no raiding comes. No arrows. No burning of turf homes. Only quiet observation, and soon quiet exchange. The Inuit show you how to build better shelters. Low-curved, warm, like the belly of an animal. They show you how to trap Arctic hare with bone snares. How to use every part of a seal. They laugh when you waste blubber. They do not mock. They teach. You in return offer iron. They admire your knives, your fishhooks, your sewing needles. One man trades 3 fox pelts for a single nail. He holds it like treasure. Communication is slow. There are no shared words, only gestures and patience. You learn to point, to mimic, to smile with the eyes. Eventually, a few words pass between you. They call themselves Tunit, or sometimes Inuit. You don't yet know the difference. You only know they are not like you, and yet they are also human. One winter they vanish. Their kayaks glide across the ice and are gone. You are left with meat furs and a silence that feels less cold than before. They will return, perhaps, or not. Either way, the world feels wider now. You begin to wonder, were you the first to settle this land, or just the loudest? A child carves a small figure from bone. It wears both a Norse cloak and an Inuit hood. It is placed on the altar beside a wooden cross and a piece of hammered iron. No one moves it. In the dark months when the snow piles high and the wind makes the walls tremble, you think of them, the Inuit, moving somewhere beyond the reach of your maps, living not despite the cold, but because of it. You admire them, and you fear them, because they remind you of a truth too large to name. This land was never yours to conquer. You were only ever borrowing it. They say his voice could calm the sea. His name is Alfar. A man not born in Greenland, but sent here across the northern ocean by papal decree to shepherd a flock on the edge of the known world. He arrives in Brattahlid on a gray ship cloaked in silence and Latin, his eyes weathered like old leather. You remember the day he came. Children ran to the shore to greet him. Women crossed themselves. Men looked up from their axes and fishing lines, uncertain whether to bow. Alfar did not smile, but neither did he scold. He stepped onto Greenland soil and whispered something in a language you did not understand. Then quietly he got to work. Under his hand, the church of Gardar is rebuilt with stone brought from nearby cliffs. A bell is cast from melted tools and gifted silver. He begins to teach again Latin psalms letters, shaped with care on sheepskin scrolls. You learn from him, though you are no scholar. He says little, but when he speaks, it's with a weight that fills the room. He talks not of fire and brimstone, but of endurance. Of how the desert fathers wandered into dust, and how you too are in a kind of desert, made not of heat, but frost. Alfar does not condemn the old gods. He acknowledges them, nodding toward the carved hammer still nailed above your door. Faith grows where fear does not uproot it, he says once. You don't forget it. Years pass. The world beyond Greenland grows more distant. Fewer ships arrive. Some years, none. No more silver from Norway. No more letters from Rome. You ask Alfar once what the Pope thinks of your silence. He looks out the window and says, perhaps he no longer remembers we're here. Still, the bishop continues. He baptizes. marries, buries. He writes in his cold little scriptorium pages, filling with the stories of a people no longer certain they are being watched by heaven. You help him copy a map once Greenland shaped in ink, its fjords like veins, its edges curling into nothing. At the corner of the page, he writes in Latin, Ultima Fide, the last of the faith. And one winter without warning, he dies. No ceremony, no final words. Just a cold morning and a candle still burning beside a frozen hand. The community gathers. You dress him in his finest robes. You lay him to rest beside the church he rebuilt. The bell rings once, just once, and is never rung again. After that, the silence grows. There is no new bishop. No replacement comes. The church remains, but its walls sag. Its altar collects dust. The people still pray, some to Christ, some to Thor, some to the wind. You no longer ask which is which, but Alfar remains, not just in stone and scripture, but in the memory of what it meant to believe even when no one is listening. You pass his grave often. Snow gathers on the stone. In spring, small purple flowers bloom around it. The children still visit. Sometimes they leave bones carved into crosses. Sometimes runes. You don't stop them, because in a land this far from the world, memory is the holiest thing you have left. They still speak of Vinland in quiet corners, the place of wild grapes and forests. A land far to the west beyond even Greenland. Leif Erikson went there, son of Eric the Red. He returned with timber stories scars. Some say he found paradise. Others say he found only war. You have never seen it, but you know men who have tried. Their ships leave quietly, usually in late summer, when the sea is kindest and the sky stretches wide. They carry axes livestock seed. They go not as raiders, but as settlers, dreamers. Men too stubborn to accept the frost as fate. Some return, most do not. You remember one Bjarni, tall and strong, a laugh like thunder. He left with 2 sons and a hull full of dried meat. He said he would find the land leaf-touched and build a hall beneath warm trees. 3 years later, his boat came back adrift, broken empty. The sea tells no tales. Still, the pull of the west remains. You feel it sometimes when you stare into the fog over the ocean. A whisper beneath the waves. Not quite a voice. It says, there is more. There is still more. The priests discourage it. They say Greenland is your test, your penance, your Eden or your Golgotha. They say to chase new lands is to turn your back on the one God gave you. But even they grow silent as winter tightens, as food runs short, as hope becomes a brittle thing. One spring, a new ship is built. It is small, just enough for 6 souls. You help mend the sail. You know the captain, a quiet man named Ketil, who has lost 2 children to fever. He doesn't speak of discovery. He doesn't speak much at all. But his eyes always look west. Before he departs, he leaves you a bundle, salted meat, some tools, and a small carved walrus tusk. In case he says, you nod. Because what else is there to say? He leaves under a twilight sky, no crowd, no blessing. Just the sound of paddles on water, and then nothing. You never see him again, but months later, a bird comes, a gull with strange feathers, speckled with red. You watch it circle, then vanish over the ice, and somehow you believe, not in a promised land, not an easy fortune, but in the idea that somewhere the cold ends, that somewhere beyond this great silent whiteness, there is still another beginning. The snow comes earlier now. It falls before the harvest is done, covering half-filled granaries, half-slaughtered sheep. You dig through it with bare hands, trying to reach what little is left beneath. The fields freeze before they yield. You eat fish bones boiled for broth. You chew dried seaweed with salt. And still it is not enough. You're not alone in this. Across the fjords, smoke rises from fewer homes. Once you could see lights flicker in every valley. Now, only darkness. You don't know if they left, or if they're simply no longer lighting fires. At the church in Gardar, the bell is quiet. The priest, old soft-spoken faithful, rarely leaves the chapel. The altar cloths are worn. The Latin chants whisper thin. Fewer come. Fewer kneel, not because they've lost faith, but because they've grown too tired to carry it. There are still births, but fewer. Still laughter sometimes, but smaller hollow, like echoes in a long hallway. And there are still deaths. More than before, you bury them as best you can. In shallow graves when the ground allows. In snowbanks when it does not. You carve names into driftwood and plant them upright like standing stones. Some of the markers blow away in the night. You stop replacing them. One day you visit a neighboring homestead 2 valleys away. You knock on the door. No answer. You push inside. Silence. A pot still hangs above cold ashes. A bowl sits half full of spoiled curd. A child's toy carved from antler lies in the corner abandoned. There is no sign of violence, only absence. This happens again and again. You begin to realize that Greenland is dying, not with fire or blood, but with silence. People vanish the way frost melts, slowly, imperceptibly, until all that remains is water. Then mist. Then nothing. You write a letter to Iceland. You speak of need food iron people. You send it with a fisherman brave enough to attempt the crossing. He never returns. You no longer expect answers. One night you stand outside your home and look up. The aurora dances above you green-blue, shifting like a ghost across the stars. You used to believe they were spirits. Maybe they are. Maybe they're the souls of those who left watching, waiting for you to join them. Behind you, your child stirs in sleep. You hear a cough light, dry but too familiar. You close the door softly, and you do not cry, because tears freeze too quickly here, and you need your warmth. One spring, the ice refuses to break. The fjord stays frozen well into the season. You wait as always for the thaw, for the sound of cracking sheets, the groan of water moving beneath. But it never comes. Boats remain pulled onto land, rotting slightly at the edges. Nets stiffen in the wind, untouched. Without fish, there is only what little livestock remains. You try hunting inland caribou birds, anything that moves. But the herds are gone, maybe driven south, maybe gone forever. The dogs begin to look at you with hungry eyes, and you understand them. You remember a time when the sea brought life. Salted cod whales, driftwood from distant lands. Now it brings nothing. Or worse, icebergs that tear the coastline like claws, tides that rise and do not fall, storms that arrive without wind. One day the sea returns, but not as friend. A gale rips through the valley. It screams like something alive. You feel it press against your chest, clawing through seams in the turf walls. It howls for 3 days. When it passes, 3 homes are gone. One washed into the fjord, another crushed under a boulder that tumbled from a sodden cliff. You help pull bodies from the wreckage. They are stiff faces, blank, still holding what they tried to save. Blankets, tools, a wooden cross. No one speaks. There are fewer words these days. You begin to wonder if the sea is reclaiming you slowly, deliberately, like a god insulted. Some say it is because you stayed too long, that Greenland was meant to be passed through, not possessed, that this land was a test, and you failed to read the signs. Others say this is just the world's way of reminding you you are small. You mend what you can, rebuild, share dried meat between households. But there is less of everything, less food, less warmth, less death. One boy speaks of leaving. There's nothing left here. He says, only ghosts. You tell him the sea is worse. He shrugs. Maybe they'll let us pass. You don't stop him. You just watch as he and 3 others walk toward the shore with paddles on their backs and empty stomachs. You never see them again. You never ask, because part of you knows you're no longer living in Greenland. You are surviving its memory. The sea, when it finally thaws, is quiet again. Too quiet. No fish, no boats, no sails. Just a vast mirror of sky reflecting everything that once was, and nothing that remains. You used to count the seasons by the sails. Each summer you would climb to the ridge and scan the sea for the white teeth of a ship. Sometimes it was Icelandic, other times from Norway. Always welcome, always awaited. They brought news, salt, iron, wine. Even a rumor was enough to sustain you through the long night. But now no one comes. It has been 5 years, or 6. You've stopped marking. The last ship arrived with a single mast, half its crew lost to scurvy. It bore no bishop, no supplies, only questions. They asked if anyone still lived here, as if you were ghosts, as if the stone churches and mossy roofs were echoes, not homes. They left quickly. You watch them go quietly without waving. Since then, nothing. The world has turned inward. Norway fights itself. Iceland withers. The Pope's edicts no longer reach this far. You are no longer part of the world's body, only its forgotten limb, frost-bitten and severed. At first, some still hoped. They will return, they said. They cannot forget us. Now no one says that. You sometimes speak to the sea as if it remembers, as if it might reply. It never does. Its silence is vast and calm and final. One day, a boy asks, "What's outside Greenland?" You don't answer, because you've begun to doubt you remember. Books still exist. Scripture, old map sagas, inked on brittle vellum. But the language is fading. Fewer can read. The children learn words for snow hunger and stone, not for trade or voyage or king. The church remains standing but hollow. Mice nest in its eaves. The altar is covered in dust. Someone lights a candle there once a week, perhaps out of faith, perhaps out of habit. You find yourself speaking aloud less often. Even your thoughts are quieter. You begin to understand what it means to fade, not to die in fire or war, but to slowly vanish from the page, to have your name worn smooth by wind, to have your gods forgotten, your language swallowed by frost, your bones mistaken for driftwood. But you also feel something else, a kind of peace. There is no one left to impress, no battles left to fight, only the land and your breath and the rhythm of survival. You are not remembered, but you are real. And in this cold silence that is enough, the stone walls still stand. At Hvalsey, the church remains upright gray blocks fitted together with stubborn precision. Grass grows through the cracks. Birds nest in the corners of the windowless frame. But the walls hold, as if the place refuses to fall before the people do. You visit once a year, not for worship, but to remember. This is where the last recorded event in Greenland's Norse history took place, a wedding. Years ago. Maybe decades. No one is certain anymore. The parchment that described it is fading, but the names linger. Thorstein and Sigrid. They were married here in the last great gathering before the silence became permanent. You imagine the scene, the guests in fur and wool, the priest lifting a cracked chalice, the clink of wooden cups. Laughter even. Dancing. A feast pulled from thin land and thinner sea. You picture someone singing, someone kissing someone's hand. The light of the northern sun glowing through an open doorway. It must have been beautiful. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was desperate. A final flare before extinction. One last effort to believe in continuity, to pretend that tomorrow still existed. You sit now on the stone step where the bride might have waited. The wind whispers through the empty doorframe. The moss smells like time. You close your eyes, and for a moment you almost hear it again. The sound of feet on flagstone, the rustle of cloth, the hush before vows. Then nothing. Hvalsey is empty. No more ceremonies. No more records. No more people. Only the ruins. They say this was the last known act of the Greenland Norse, the final line in the saga inked before the quill broke. After the wedding, the names vanish. So do the ships. The settlements shrink into stone and silence. No one writes what happened next. Maybe they starved. Maybe they sailed away. Maybe they were folded into another people, another story, another name. You don't need to know, because you are here, alive, cold, listening. You rise, place your hand on the ancient wall. It's still warm from the sun. That's enough. There are no more names, no ships on the horizon, no bells in Gardar, no smoke rising from turf-roofed homes, only wind, only ice, only stone. Your fingers are older now. Your breath slower. You walk among the empty valleys where people once sang, where children once played in the sunlit grass. There are bones in the fields, pale and scattered, swallowed halfway by the earth. Sheep bones, cow bones, human bones. You do not disturb them. They are not strange to you. They are family. You enter an old house, the roof collapsed, the hearth crumbled to ash. A spindle lies untouched on the floor, a wooden comb, a child's shoe. You kneel not in mourning, but in memory. This is not tragedy. This is time. You've learned to read it in the moss, in the tilt of abandoned beams, in the silence between bird cries. The story of Greenland's Vikings does not end with fire. It ends with absence, the kind so complete it feels sacred. No one came to conquer you. No war, no plague, no invading horde. Only the cold, the hunger, the forgetting. You wonder what the world thinks happened here, if it thinks of you at all. Perhaps they tell stories of foolish settlers who came too far, of men who defied the gods, of women who refused to leave. Let them. You have your own story, a quiet one. You gather wood from a drifted pile long frozen into the ground. It takes hours. Your body protests, but you succeed. You build a small fire on the hill overlooking the fjord. Just enough for warmth, just enough for memory. You sit and you speak, not to anyone in particular, just to the wind, to the sea, to the stones. You say your name. You say your parents' names. You list those who came before you, their hands, their hunger, their laughter. You say them slowly so the world might remember, even if it is only the world that remains. The fire crackles. The light fades. The aurora returns writhing green across the black sky. You watch it, your breath white, your eyes open. And then the wind stops, just for a moment, as if something has heard you, as if something somewhere remembers. You close your eyes and let the silence carry you.